I think everybody who listens to the Gary Neville podcast would expect to hear this weekend Gary Neville again on the subject of Manchester United.
Do we have to?
Well, no, you don't. It's your podcast. But they lost at Newcastle. What did you make of it?
Oh, it was poor, wasn't it? It was a poor performance, really poor performance. 1-0 doesn't really sort of tell the story. I remember going to Juventus once in 95 or 96 and we got beat 1-0 and it felt like a 7-0. And that must have been what that United group of players felt like yesterday, because they were never in the game. And 1-0 makes it look really sort of narrow and tight. But inconsistency in every walk of life undermines you. You lose faith and trust in each other. And they're so inconsistent. They're so up and down. They're so erratic from game to game, from half to half. And the problem is there is a real pattern of them not turning up in big games away from home now that you can't shake off. They've got Anfield, I think. They've got Chelsea at home on Wednesday night, which will be tough enough. But then Bournemouth, and then I think Anfield the Sunday after, which obviously we're doing that game. And those games sort of like the damage of last season. And it's okay saying they'll be concentrating on Chelsea, but in the back of their minds, they'll also think that game's coming up away from home and what's going to happen there. Honestly, I think at the moment, we've been here before. It feels like sort of a Groundhog Day, doesn't it? Where the players sort of look a little disinterested at times. The body language is poor. The performances are average. The manager starts to come under criticism. The recruitment department start to get battered. The owners start to, obviously, from a continual period, sort of, they've still not done their business in respect of the ownership. Whether that happens this week or next week, I'm not sure, but it seems like it's imminent. And they're stuck. They're stuck in a cycle of failure relative to the money that's been spent and the size of the club and the previous success. And it won't change until, I don't think, until there is real structural change. I've said it time and time again, there is no point in shouting anymore. I sat at home last night, as I always do with Manchester United, if I'm not doing the game, with excitement and hope, because that's what you do as a fan of a football club. And you start to watch the game, and even at half-time, you're thinking, oh, that was a really poor first half. They'll be better in the second half, but they're not.
Was that surprising to you, only in the context of the week they've just had? Because if we cast our minds back to last Sunday morning, they had 3 big, noisy away games on the trot.
Yeah.
And they actually dealt with angry Everton very, very well.
Yeah.
OK, they made mistakes in Istanbul, which cost them important points, but it was not as bad as yesterday. And it felt as though they sort of had a momentum, and they did have a bit of a core and a bit of something about them, and it just didn't happen at Newcastle.
The problem is, if you just knock them off track slightly, like Istanbul will have done, and the fact that they may not qualify for the Champions League, probably won't qualify for the Champions League next round, they don't react well. They sort of, it knocks them completely. And then you start to think about that Everton game. They should have been level at half-time, Everton. In fact, Everton should have been 2 or 3 up. I mean, they had real good chances, didn't they? So you start to look back then at the games where even they have won 3-0 and question that. And all I would say is that you can play poorly and win. But Manchester United have been doing that now for a long time. And I was critical of Louis van Gaal at Manchester United, and I felt as though his football didn't suit the club and how Manchester United should play, which I think is more like the Klopp style of play. And obviously I'm going to choose a current manager rather than go back to how we used to play. I'm going to use a current manager that plays really electric football, fast pressing, high tempo, get it forward, a bit more direct. And I can't think of a team since Louis van Gaal. Louis van Gaal dominated football matches at Manchester United. There was a style of play. Since Louis van Gaal, I don't think I've seen a pattern of play established, and that's probably 7 or 8 years now. And I've seen the same type of football, irrespective of who the manager is. No manager has been able to sort of settle on a style of play, and it goes something like counter-attack, moments, maybe dominate against lesser teams at Old Trafford and look like you can play a little bit, but don't kid us, because every time you play against a top team, you get done. And that's been the same for 7 or 8 years. There's only Louis van Gaal since Sir Alex Ferguson has been able to implement a style of play at the club. Every other manager whether it be Jose Mourinho, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, David Moyes was there for a short period, and now obviously Erik ten Hag's been there for 18 months. And what really damages the likes of, say, Erik ten Hag and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and Jose Mourinho is that they've all spent 300-400 million quid, but De Zerbi at Brighton and Postecoglou at Spurs and others like them have come in, and in 3 or 4 months they've got them playing like Real Madrid. So that's the problem they've got, because it's been shown that you can come in and have an impact upon players and a pattern of play and a style in 3 or 4 months, and we're still sat here sort of 8 years after Louis van Gaal leaves and haven't seen a pattern of play, a combination that you see repeatedly. I saw Paul Scholes talking this morning, and it was really interesting about how he knew where players were. We did play on clockwork. He knew exactly where everyone was on the pitch. Now, we played together a long time, and there was a set system of play. But that's football. Those Spurs players out there today, forget the fact that we played for 10 years together and we had a set system of play and clockwork, and we knew full well that if Dennis Irwin played it into Paul Scholes, I knew he was on the half turn and I was going and right back because he was going to switch the play to me. And he was going to switch the play to David Beckham maybe, and I'd go on the overlap. And that's it. You know, and on the other side, you'd see other systems of play. I'd knock it into Roy Keane, he'd nip it round the corner into Dwight York's feet, pop it off to David Beckham, and then you just knew, I can see it now in my head. Out here today, I can watch two teams, manager who's been here many years and a manager who's been here many months, a few months, and I can tell you exactly what their patterns are and what they're going to do. And the players on the pitch know where their next pass is. I can't tell you in the last 8 years, and that's why I'm not just including Erik ten Hag in it, I can't tell you Manchester United's style of play or pattern of play under Jose Mourinho, Ole and Erik ten Hag. I don't know why that is, because they're not all bad managers. They're good managers. They've had real success at other clubs, maybe not Ole as much. He obviously came in a little differently. But they've all had real sort of successful patterns. Erik ten Hag at Ajax created some of the most beautiful football. But he comes to Old Trafford and spends a lot of money and he's incapable of implementing that style of play. And we can argue he's got a couple of injuries here or there, but Postecoglou's come here today with half a team and played. They've played and they've had courage to play. So it's well below par. It's really disappointing. I feel like we're in a cycle of, to be fair, we're now starting, or the noise against the manager is starting to occur. There is then those same noises that say, well, surely we can't get rid of another manager. We've got to get rid of the players because they're the ones that have got rid of the other managers. And then we turn to the owners and I'm bored. I've become tired of my own club. I don't want to do their games anymore. I don't want to watch their games anymore. And that is the saddest indictment that you can have of your football club, when you become bored of watching them, when you become tired of watching them. And it's not just me. A couple of people in the last couple of weeks, enough's enough. I know, and the daft thing is, Peter, on Wednesday night, I'll build my whole Wednesday night around watching Manchester United, because that's life. We go and watch them again, don't we?
That's fanhood.
That's how I feel today. I feel tired of watching them, and that's a sad, I think, that's a sad position to be in, because I love that club, and I love the excitement of football, but I'm already fearing what's going to happen at Anfield in 2 weeks, just purely because I think that it could be a mess. I'm already fearing what's going to happen on Wednesday night against Chelsea, because it could be a mess. And there's no confidence. They've lost our confidence. The whole club has lost our confidence as fans. And in the media now, we just don't trust them either, because the reality of it is they fall below par time and time again. And not good enough. Definitely not good enough.